Aloha and welcome. Join us as we journey to the summit of the tallest mountain in the world to witness a stunning sunset amongst the clouds and observatories high up in the thin atmosphere atop this towering active volcano. Unlike most high mountains, the shallow slopes of Mauna Kea, the tallest mountain on Earth, allow for us to actually build a road to the summit, so there is no need for complicated mountaineering equipment, training, or even fitness. You can simply head up in a regular car. Well, almost. Due to the high altitude and rough nature of the road, the Mauna Kea Rangers impose certain restrictions on visitors to make sure everyone is capable and able to summit this legendary peak safely. In this video, we take a drive up to the top of the volcano, explain how you can go about planning a trip yourself, explain what issues and difficulties we faced, and of course take in some stunning views, a mind-blowing sunset, and catch a glimpse of the stunning night sky and the Milky Way from this towering natural wonder. But first, let's address the elephant in the room, or as you might say, the Everest in the room. You might be thinking you were taught as a child that the tallest mountain in the world was Mount Everest. Well, that is not technically correct. Mount Everest is the highest mountain in the world. Think of it like me and Kate. I am 5'10" and she is 4'11". If Kate were to stand on a chair, it would not make her taller than me, just higher. Likewise, Everest is sitting on the Asian continental plate, meaning its base rises up from sea level to 29,000 feet at the summit. Mauna Kea's summit is only 13,803 feet above sea level, but the base of the mountain is 16,000 feet down in the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, giving it a total height of 30,600 feet. Taller than Mount Everest, just not higher. 13,600 feet is not actually that tall for a mountain. In fact, it's only the 59th tallest in the United States. However, it does have the second highest prominence, which is the measure that makes a mountain seem tall. And as we will find out, 13,600 feet is still very high up and presents some real challenges, even when driving to the summit. The first section of the route is to the visitor center. This has no restrictions and has an easy paved road the whole way up. The first part is on the saddle road and can be approached from either the Kona side or the Hilo side, but it's much closer to Hilo and the drive over from Kona takes significantly longer. But this is the easy bit. To go any further, you're going to need to meet the ranger's requirements. First and foremost is the requirement for a 4x4 vehicle. There is some debate as to whether this means a true four-wheel drive or you can get away with an all-wheel drive. But it's not really worth the risk of being turned away, so we made sure we got a real four-wheel drive with a low ratio box. In our case, we went with a Ford Ranger. It was a bit overkill for most of the trip, but made our journey to the summit effortless. The decision as to which cars are allowed up will be solely with the ranger at the checkpoint. If he thinks it's unsuitable, you ain't going up. It's also worth noting that very few hire companies allow you up in their vehicles, and if an area is forbidden by a rental provider, it automatically disqualifies you for any insurance you may have, even from your own provider or the rental companies. So if your rental company says no, but you go anyway, you are going to be doing it uninsured. This is a very bad idea, as there is a high chance of issues up in the high mountains, with rough terrain and heaps of inexperienced drivers around. And if something goes wrong, recovery is going to be extremely expensive. Some people now use Turo as a way around this, and many hosts do not prohibit you from using their vehicles as a way to get to the summit. In fact, some actively promote it. But be aware, Turo's own insurance policies prohibit use on unimproved roads, so you still may be uninsured. We recommend using one of the few smaller rental companies that specifically rent their cars out for use on the summit. Check the description for some links to these companies. This leads us on to our next requirement. The 4x4 rule is rigorously enforced. There is a checkpoint at the visitor center and every car is checked for suitability, as are the drivers. You will be quizzed on experience and your knowledge of 4x4 driving, along with the requirement to show you can actually operate the vehicle properly. This is just a basic exam, showing you can select manual, change into low, and basically know how to safely operate the car under off-road conditions. Don't just turn up in a 4x4 and expect to be let up the hill. The Ranger will also check you have the mandatory half tank of gas. It is also strongly advised you spend a minimum of 30 minutes at the visitor center getting acclimatized to the altitude. At the visitor center, the altitude is 9,199 feet and the air is not too thin. It's below the 10,000 foot barrier where things start getting difficult. But you may have driven up to this height in quite an express fashion, and the next 4,000 feet are critical. Spending some time here letting your body acclimatise can really be the difference between feeling okay at the top and having a real issue. Altitude sickness is real, but this is a great opportunity to take in the views, enjoy the exhibits at the centre and take a bathroom break. But factor this into your calculation on how long it will take you to get to the summit in time for sunset. The final rule is that you need to leave almost immediately after sunset. You cannot stay at the summit to watch the stars, which is quite annoying, but we'll look at the stargazing on offer at the visitor center later. With all these precautions, checks and requirements in place, it's easy to be pretty intimidated by the final 8.5 miles of steep, rugged off-road trail that lies ahead, taking you up the final 4,000 feet of the volcano. But really, it's not that bad. It's a graded washboard trail with very little in the way of ruts, potholes or anything that will present a challenge. Most of the bends are protected by rails or earth banks, and while it's pretty steep, it's nothing to get worried about. In fact, the only issues we had were the dust and the low sun. This made seeing where you were going pretty tricky, but the drive itself was actually fine. There were a few drivers heading up who really shouldn't have been, and were displaying driving styles that were actually quite dangerous. They probably thought they were being cautious, but the way they would slow heavily on the steep corners just meant they were risking losing traction and causing more issues for the cars behind. While this is an okay road, you do still need to have a basic understanding of off-road driving for it to be safe. That's the reason for the checks. The road is fine, if you know what you are doing, but if not, you could be in a world of... The off-road portion is actually only around 5 miles, and once up the main slope, the asphalt returns, and the final push to the summit is an easy drive. The views are now starting to get mind-blowing, with a sea of clouds stretching off in all directions as you push up the final slope to join up with the rest of the explorers amongst the amazing summit observatories. It's here where the thin air really starts to be noticeable. We have been up Haleakala on Maui several times, along with a few other high mountains, but these were all around the 10,000 foot mark. Mauna Kea is only 3,000 foot more, but wow, the difference is staggering, literally. Only 2 weeks ago, we had to hike approximately 1,000 meters up the final summit slope of Haleakala. We were in a bit of a rush to catch the sunset, and the effort was pretty exhausting, with the fast uphill hike really taking your breath away. You could definitely notice the difference from sea level, but it was okay. Atop Mauna Kea, I needed a rest after just getting out of the truck. A short walk around had me dizzy and extremely lightheaded and not feeling very good at all. It was exceedingly difficult just to function as a basic human being at this altitude. The only time I was feeling okay was simply sitting still, resting and not exerting any energy at all. It was quite the eye-opener, and that was with the 30-minute acclimatization. Yes and no. The sunset was pretty magical, as you can see from these amazing images. The sea of clouds, the insane colours, and the contrast of the observatories meant this was an experience we would never forget. It was right at the end of our month in Hawaii, so we had seen and done a lot. But this still made our hair stand on end, but we still can't quite say all that hassle was worth it. However, this sort of experience is more about the adventure. The whole trek to the summit was part of the experience, and with that in mind, it was absolutely worth it. This felt like a real challenge rather than just a tourist outing, like we battled against the mountain to get up here, and the stunning sunset was the ultimate payoff. So yes, it was absolutely worth it, but only if you are of an adventurous soul who takes pleasure in the challenge as well as the payoff. Shortly after the sun dipped and the skies began darkening through hues of red, purple and blue, the rangers started clearing people off the mountain. The observatories began opening up for their night of work studying the stars, and we began the long procession back down the mountain, with no low sun to blind you and less awareness of the plunging heights you were teetering on. Instead, it was more of a challenge of using the engine braking to save your brakes. At the visitor centre, the rangers check your brake temperatures and give you an enforced timeout if they are too hot. The ranger had to check ours twice, as he didn't believe how cool they were. I basically didn't use them once on the descent. Regardless of the flying colours, we still took a timeout as we wanted to do a little stargazing. At 9,000 feet, with very little in the way of light pollution, the stargazing at the visitor centre is out of this world. Around an hour after sunset, the skies turn an inky black and the stars erupt in spectacular fashion. Only they didn't. Unfortunately, we had a real party pooper on our hands in the way of a super bright, super clear moon. This did a lot to wash out the stars and make the Milky Way only slightly visible. It was still a nice spectacle, but not a patch on Haleakala a few weeks earlier while the moon was set. We do find it a little annoying that the rangers clear everyone off the mountain so we can't enjoy the stars from the summit, but they can't leave until everyone is off the mountain and they do have homes to go to. And on this night, the moon would still have spoiled the show. If stargazing is important to you, make sure you check out the moonset and the moonrise times for your trip. We use the stargazing app PhotoPills, and you can find a link to this in our description. As we headed back down the mountain in the inky black of night, it was hard not to be overawed at the incredible celestial display we had just witnessed. This is a real demonstration of the majesty of nature, the mighty volcano rising up from the depths of the abyss to reach out to the very heavens. It's all pretty moving and quite humbling. We all live pretty introverted lives, and it's rare to see nature on full display like this in such an obvious manner. If you can organise a vehicle, are experienced enough to drive it, and adventurous enough to really get joy out of the journey, sunset at the top of Mauna Kea is a seriously rewarding endeavour. If not, you can still experience it, but we recommend using a guided service to take all the risk and worry out of it. There are loads of tours that operate and will take you right to the summit with very little to no adventure, just a safe guiding hand. We've linked a few of these in the description for you. We hope you enjoyed our amazing adventure up the tallest mountain in the world. If you want to see more Hawaii content, then please subscribe to the channel or check out our other videos detailing all the amazing things we did in Hawaii. Next up, we are heading to New York to see if we can visit the Big Apple on a shoestring budget, so stick around for that. Mahalo for watching.